In the news tonight, addressing the Arab Summit in Qatar, the King calls for a quick and comprehensive solution to the Syrian conflict and exert more effort to rebuild trust between the Palestinians and Israel. Syrian rebel fighters step up their attacks in the capital Damascus, and the UNHCR makes an appeal to all parties in the conflict to ensure the safe passage of aid convoys in the country. And Jordan beats Japan in the World Cup qualifier match to move to second place in the group with 7 points. Good evening. Welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty the King called His Royal Highness Prince Ali ibn al-Hussein, President of the Jordan Football Association and Vice President of FIFA, to congratulate him after Jordan beat Japan in a World Cup qualifier match held this evening in Amman. During the telephone conversation, King Abdullah, who was in Doha for an Arab summit, he voiced pride in the major accomplishment achieved by Jordan's Al Nashama and thanked the coach and all administrative and technical staff for this achievement. He also expressed hope that the win will be followed by more successes for the national football team. We will have more on the match, which everybody in Jordan watched tonight, in our sports news. His Majesty the King led Jordan's delegation to the Arab Summit in Doha, which included His Royal Highness Crown Prince Al Hussein. Addressing the Arab Summit, the King urged the international community to stand up to its responsibility and exert more effort to rebuild trust between the Palestinians and Israel to revive the stalled peace talks. He stressed the need to solve all final status issues leading to the establishment of an independent and viable Palestinian state on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, on the basis of the two-state solution and in accordance with international legitimacy and the Arab Peace Initiative. The King also said the international community must pressure Israel to halt its unilateral activities, which only serve to obstruct peace efforts. On the Syrian crisis, the King called for a collective world effort to find a comprehensive political solution that ends the suffering of the people and stops the violence and while preserving the unity of the nation. He said that the critical situation in Syria has affected all countries in the region, especially neighboring states, and has created a substantial and extraordinary burden due to a growing influx of Syrian refugees. On the sidelines of the summit, His Majesty the King met with Iraqi Vice President Khudair Khuzai and discussed with him bilateral relations, ways of cementing them in various fields. During the meeting, they discussed developments in the Middle East, particularly efforts to achieve just and comprehensive peace, the crisis in Syria, and its repercussions on the countries of the region, and burdens borne due to hosting of Syrian refugees. The King and the Iraqi Vice President expressed hope that the summit will contribute to promoting joint Arab action in the face of various challenges. His Majesty also met with Libyan Prime Minister Ali Zaidan Mohammed and discussed ways to strengthen and develop relations between Jordan and Libya. The meeting also touched on means of boosting joint Arab solidarity and current developments in the Middle East, namely peace efforts and Syria. The 24th Arab Summit agreed that Arab League member states had the right to provide military support to Syrians fighting President Bashar al-Assad. According to a draft resolution, the summit urged regional and international organizations to recognize the opposition National Coalition for Syrian Revolution and opposition forces as the sole legitimate representative of the Syrian people. 15 heads of Arab states and leaders of Syria's main opposition group attended the summit, with the Syrian crisis and the Palestinian issue topping the agenda. Zainab Soufa has the details.
Heads of Arab states started their annual meeting in Doha, receiving the Syrian National Coalition to represent Syria with applause.
Allow me to invite Mr. Muad al-Khatib, the head of the Syrian Opposition Coalition, and Mr. Ghassan Hito, the head of the Syrian interim government, and their delegation to take the seat of the Arab Republic of Syria at this summit.
the 24th Arab League Summit on the Syrian conflict and support to Palestinians in Jerusalem on top of its agenda, along the stalled Palestinian-Israeli peacemaking. In his opening speech as host, the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, urged the UN Security Council to stop the killing in Syria's 2-year-old civil war and hold those responsible to account before international courts. Qatar also called for the immediate establishment of a $1 billion fund to help Palestinians in Arab East Jerusalem and offered to contribute $250 million to it. Sheikh Hamad said Jerusalem is in serious danger, which requires serious action. He added that Palestinian, Arab, and Islamic rights in Jerusalem cannot be compromised, and Israel realized that.
I call your respected summit to approve if we are serious in defending Arab Jerusalem and to rescue what we can rescue of Jerusalem, to establish a fund of $1 billion to support Jerusalem with immediate implementation after the end of this summit. In the name of the State of Qatar, I announce the contribution of $250 million and the rest of the fund to be paid by capable Arab countries.
Discussing the Syrian conflict, Syrian opposition leader Mu'adh al-Khatib said the United States should use Patriot missiles to protect rebel-held areas from President Bashar al-Assad's air power.
We thank all world governments, but I say that the role of the United States is much bigger than. I have asked Mr. Kerry to extend the umbrella of the Patriot missiles to cover the Syrian north, and he promised to study the subject. We are still waiting for a decision from NATO to protect people's lives, not to fight, but to protect people's lives.
NATO swiftly rebuffed the idea. Al-Khatib urged Arab rulers to free political prisoners and joined Syrians in breaking a link of oppression. Acknowledging that he was breaking away from the diplomatic protocol, he called on the leaders to reinforce their countries with fairness and justice. Al-Khatib's request echoed the emphasis in his summit speech on the need to respect human rights and end violence against innocents, sentiments voiced frequently by demonstrators who have driven the Arab uprisings of the past 2 years. Zina Abu Sufa for the News at 10.
Here at home, Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour met United Arab Emirates Interior Ministry Under Secretary Lieutenant General Saif al-Shaffar and Police Commander of the Emirate of Ras Al Khaimah, Major General Talib al-Qasimi. Talks during the meeting dealt with ways of cementing security cooperation, particularly in the fields of training and the exchange of expertise. Mansour told the UAE delegation that Jordan had faced economic hardship, particularly in the last 2 years, which were the toughest for the kingdom due to regional turmoil. He pointed to the humanitarian repercussions of the conflict in Syria on Jordan, which is home to 1.3 million Syrians, about half of whom came to the kingdom before the crisis. The UAE team expressed their country's keenness on increasing cooperation and benefiting from advanced expertise, noting that Jordanian manpower had largely contributed to the UAE's development drive. Senate President Tahir al-Masri condemned as falsehoods remarks by a senior leader of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood that Jordan and Israel emerged under the patronage of the US and Britain after World War II. Commenting on the remark by Chairman of the Freedom and Justice Party, Issam al-Arian, on his Facebook page, Masri said Jordan is a deep-rooted Arab state that emerged by the forearms of its sons and honorable Hashemite leadership, and as the blessed fruit of the Great Arab Revolt, which was opposed to colonial ambitions and the expansionist Zionist enterprise. He added that trying to thrust Jordan alongside Israel in such an allegation is extremely strange and void of logic and honesty, as it comes from a Muslim Arab who holds an official leadership position in the Muslim Brotherhood group in Egypt. Masri said Arian's talk about U.S. financial, political, or security support to Jordan is out of context and seems as if the kingdom is the only Arab state that receives such aid, noting that Egypt gets much more assistance. And over to the endless violence in Syria. Syrian forces recaptured Bab Amr district in central Homs, according to an opposition monitoring group. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said pro-government forces regained the district, left largely uninhabitable by fierce campaigns of rocket fire and air raids after more than 2 weeks of fighting. Video posted on social media websites showed rebels fighting back and firing at government forces. The clip also appeared to show rebel fighters capturing 2 government soldiers. Meanwhile, several people were killed and wounded when a car bomb exploded in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Syrian TV said the blast was set off by a suicide car bomber in the northeastern district of Rukn. But opposition activists in the area said it was not yet clear if the attack was a bomb or mortar shell. Both the government forces and the opposition didn't offer a death toll from the blast. Meanwhile, the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, made an appeal to all parties in the Syrian conflict to ensure the safe passage of aid convoys in the country. The appeal comes one day after the United Nations said it will move about half of its 100 foreign staff out of Syria after mortar bombs fell near their hotels in Damascus, damaging the building and a UN vehicle. The UNHCR said it is working with government and non-government parties to see that aid gets through, but assistance is only a fraction of those in need. The decision followed a heightening of insecurity, with a number of incidents reported in the last few days close to the center of Damascus, where many UN personnel are located.
The clear problem is insecurity. That, above anything else, is making it difficult for us all to get aid through. But then are the complexities to negotiate passage for aid convoys in, and that requires negotiations with often a large number of actors. So it's simply a very, very difficult environment. We nonetheless need to find ways to get more aid to more people. There's no other way around it.
It's not the first time that we have gone through this kind of exercise of relocating staff, bringing them back to the country when there is a slight improvement and when the security situation permits. So we have done it several times before and managed to keep up our operation up and running and even expand.
Cypriots vented anger in the streets and were desperate to learn what would happen to their savings, with the government yet to reveal details of controls it will impose to prevent a run when banks reopen after a painful bailout. The Eurogroup chairman caused uproar in financial markets by saying that the Cyprus solution gave a flavor of how Europe would handle future bank crises, by making banks solve their own problems rather than using European taxpayers' money. The banks at the center of the financial crisis are Bank of Cyprus and Cyprus Popular Bank, which are currently limiting ATM withdrawals to €100 a day. Here's more.
Troika, get out. That's the message from Cypriot students marching on Parliament. They accuse international lenders of drinking the government's blood by making bank depositors pay for the country's financial crisis.
They've just gotten rid of all our dreams, everything we've worked out for, everything we've achieved up until now, what our parents have achieved.
Cyprus would be bankrupt without an EU bailout, but unlike Greece, reaction on the island has been relatively muted. Some say Cypriots are failing to grasp the gravity of their predicament. But Robert Cole from Reuters Breaking Views says that's not the case.
Underneath, I would be astonished if actually the broad mass of the Cypriot people weren't really, really worried, didn't feel really, really let down. So just because you don't see petrol bombs being thrown around the place doesn't mean to say there isn't severe disquiet.
Markets have regained their composure after comments by the head of the Eurogroup raised fears Cyprus would be the template for any future bailouts. Banks in Cyprus will remain closed until Thursday, and even then they'll be subject to capital controls to prevent a run on deposits. Russians are believed to account for most of the €19 billion of non-EU cash on the island, and they're voicing their concerns loud and clear.
Shock, to be honest. Shock because what has happened in Cyprus is unprecedented. It has not happened anywhere in the world.
Preventing people moving funds out of the country is designed to safeguard Cyprus in the short term. But even if there's no immediate bank run on Thursday, long-term, Cyprus's prospects are bleak.
A London schoolboy has just sold his smartphone news application Sumly to Yahoo for a reported $30 million. 17-year-old Nick Dalosio's creation will be integrated into Yahoo's products. Sumly pulls in news articles from online sources and uses an algorithm to identify key points, turning them into 400-character bite-sized summaries which can easily be read on mobile phones. The teenager said he had first dreamt up the mobile software while revising for a history exam years ago and was inspired by the frustrating experience of trawling through Google searches and separate websites to find information when revising for the test. Nick said he had high hopes for user response to the app, but did not expect much response from industry companies like Yahoo. Since its launch, the app has been downloaded close to 1 million times. And for now, the London teenager says he is looking forward to becoming Yahoo's youngest employee.
And this allows me to tweet, Facebook, or email the link as a sum.ly URL. I think if we fix this, this is the last thing, that whole 500 intro thing.
And so Jordan's Al-Nashama beat Japan 2-1 in the World Cup qualifier match. It was Khalil Bani Atiyah that opened the scoring for Al-Nashama just 1 minute before the end of the first half. Ahmed Hayes scored the second goal in the 60th minute. Japan's sole goal came in minute 69, and Nashama goalkeeper Amir Shafia shone again when he saved a Japan penalty a minute later. The result leaves Japan top of Group B with 13 points, and Al-Nashama now occupy the second place as they move on with 7 points from 6 matches. Australia and Oman, who drew 2-2 earlier in Sydney, both have 6 points. Barcelona coach Villanova returned to Spain after 2 months of cancer treatment in New York. However, the club did not say whether he would be well enough to return to work. 2 years ago, Villanova, a former Barca player, had an operation to remove a tumor from his saliva glands, then had more surgery last December, after which he flew to the U.S. for chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Barca's next match is at Celta Vigo this coming Saturday, and on April 2nd, they play against Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League Last 8 first leg. And finally, to the weather outlook. It was too good to be true. Fair and lovely tonight, but temperatures will drop tomorrow, and creating moderate and partly cloudy conditions in most regions. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk, blowing dust in the desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba, however, should expect relatively hot conditions with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, his reminder of the day's top stories. Addressing the Arab Summit in Qatar, the King calls for a quick and comprehensive solution to the Syrian conflict and more efforts exerted to rebuild trust between the Palestinians and Israel. Syrian rebel fighters step up their attacks in the capital Damascus, and the UNHCR makes an appeal to all parties in the conflict to ensure the safe passage of 8 convoys in the country. And Jordan beats Japan in the World Cup qualifier match to move to second place in the group with 7 points. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.